welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Cannell, that's Bud Elliott, and that right there is our good friend Paul. Paul is the winner for the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital auction. We've been auctioning off on these Win Totals podcasts for each conference one spot to be able to come and join us. And we've got a high standard. It was set by Wade. It was matched by Hank. We had Eric come in hot with an Isaiah Williams jersey. But the good thing here, Paul's a friend. He's a friend of the show. He's been on before. So before we dive, Danny's shaking his head right now. If you're watching on youtube.com/cover3, smash the subscribe, smash the like. Subscribers, remember, you get to chat with us during the show, and you get special treats that are going to be coming up here in the next couple of weeks leading to kickoff. We got some headlines to get to, SEC East win totals as we keep it rocking and rolling. But Paul, I want to first of all say welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for your charitable contribution to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. How are you doing here on this fine Wednesday?
Thank you. Appreciate it for having me. Pretty good. It's a little early here. I'm on the West Coast, so it's a early start for me. I'm usually working remote, not on camera, but it's great to be here. I'm glad to see you guys, and I'm looking forward to getting these totals out.
Let's do it. Danny? Yeah, you got any?
No, I'm happy to have Paul back. Let's go. I get a chance, a rematch. I get a rematch. I need to make good this year.
Yeah, and now we've also built it out. Paul was won an auction to be able to join the show last year. We had a lot of fun, little 15-minute pre-tape segment. We're live now, baby, and hanging out for the whole show. This is an expanded offering here from the Cover 3 podcast. Okay, a couple headlines before we jump into these SEC East win totals. One of them coming from the SEC East as a 5-star defensive lineman Williams Nwaneri. Williams Nwaneri has committed to Missouri. This stands out for a couple of reasons. He's one of the top in-state prospects, the number one player from the state of Missouri, and the first top player in Missouri to commit to the Tigers since Drew Lock back in 2015. He's one of the highest rated prospects that Missouri's brought in from the recruiting trail since Dorial Green Beckham back in 2010, somewhere around there. And this is also part of the name, image, and likeness world, because today on Wednesday morning, Missouri signed a bill into law that starting in September, if you are a high school athlete and you are committed to an in-state institution, you can start to receive name, image, and likeness. Now, there's still a lot of work left to be done for Eli Drinkwitz and the staff to, continue to put together this class. But Bud, first of all, obviously the prospect, let us know what you think about him. And then also, is this something that can be a real building piece for Drinkwitz in the 2024 cycle?
The special players are the guys who have the size that would imply they have to play inside, but they're able to stay outside, right? And that's basically what Williams is. Do you guys remember Mario Williams, the guy who got picked ahead of Reggie Bush, and the Texans were called an idiot for picking him, and then it turns out he was actually a great pick because he could stand up at 282, 285 pounds, that type of thing. I think that's the best case for this kid, which is, I don't know if Mario Williams is a Hall of Famer, but he was a damn good NFL player for a long time. So yeah, I mean, look, 6'5", 250, not too old for his grade level, really good, change of direction. That's kind of why I think he can remain standing up on the outside, or maybe not standing up, but as a guy who you don't necessarily have to kick down inside, or maybe he hits a huge growth spurt and he ends up 6'7", 310. But there's nothing not to like here. All the big boys were in on this. I mean, Missouri, they didn't just kind of squeak this one out just by luck. I feel like they did a great job recruiting him. Ultimately, he picked Missouri over Georgia. I know Ohio State was in on this. Oklahoma was in on this. A lot of teams down the stretch, but ultimately Missouri beats out Georgia, a team they couldn't pull it out in the end last year in that SEC East battle. This is a really great get for them. He's our number 3 overall player right now in the 24/7 Sports composite, and a guy that look, God just doesn't make many of these kids who move like this, who are built like this. And so if you're a Missouri fan, you got to be really, really pumped.
I have some strong comments on this. Eli Drinkwitz, he got extended, right? He had a little pay raise.
Yep.
We're still rocking camo cargo shorts with Birkenstocks. You're making that much money? Like
that's commitment to the bid of the Alpha Nerd, right?
Yeah. I mean, we gotta bump it up. You're making good money now. We got to start amping the game up a little bit. Question that I have for you: how concerned are you that it's August and signing day? Like, is this a lock? Would you still be concerned? Because my mind goes to guys that have, celebrated before, and then you see the switch late. Does some of the NIL things that, could be pertain to this law in place, does that make you feel protected and certain that he's from there? Like, what's the level of certainty that he actually will sign the dotted line?
Having done recruiting for over a decade, I don't like to use the word certainty with recruiting, but certainly, like Danny, I mean, I think your point's exactly right. This has to increase the likelihood that he sticks with the Tigers. And if you're a politician, pass this law. Like, who is going to be? You may be for or against NIL, but everybody still has that whole state pride thing going on, right? So it's like, hey, look, our kids who stay in our state, right, and who are taking advantage of our tax dollars, public system, whatever you want to say, like we're gonna pay them now. Like that's just an easy kind of like cheap pop to get, to use a wrestling term. So kudos to Missouri's politicians there.
Yeah, there's also a 5-star wide receiver from St. Louis named Ryan Wingo, who Missouri is very much in on as well. I haven't pulled up the 24/7 Sports crystal ball, as always. Use that to track all your future decisions. I mean, is this sort of the thing that's going to get the ball rolling, where we do see a big jump up for that class? Do you give Drink a good chance to be able to secure Wingo as well?
I think he certainly has a chance, right? And getting Nwaneri, getting Williams really will help potentially, just because it's a sign that like other top rated players believe in you. Now, producer Jordan says that he believes Ryan Wingo is a Vol. And there is a crystal ball in from Steve Wiltfong from late June for Texas. So, look, you got some schools that have all signed 5-star receivers in the past who like to chuck it around a little bit. That's gonna be interesting going down the stretch for sure. I will say, Alan True, though, who's our Midwest expert, who does a tremendous job, August 7th, he dropped a crystal ball from Missouri.
Again, the bill was signed today, Wednesday morning at Memorial Stadium, and starting in the first week of September, if you are in Missouri, you are committed to an in-state institution, that NIL faucet, according to state law, can cut on. AP Top 25 poll was released as we were wrapping up the show on Monday. We don't have to spend a lot of time here unless there's something that stands out. Danny, was there anything that jumped off the page to you about that first batch of rankings?
Just how it felt to me like the AP voters just looked at the coaches poll and were like, all right, let's maybe a small tweak there. I mean, they're identical, which, to be fair, if you do them, you do find a list to kind of give you a guideline and then go off of that. Wasn't anything surprising.
But
I do agree. Yeah, I mean, look, like,
can I ask you guys something?
Yeah.
Who do you think should be ranked higher, Florida State or LSU? And I know it doesn't matter. I absolutely know it doesn't matter because they play week 1, and I know LSU is a favorite. But if you looked at who deserves to be ranked higher, shouldn't it be Florida State?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Well, they beat them last year, right? And probably should have beat them by more than 1 point. They had 3 losses. Florida State did. All the teams that were top 25 at the time, they were closer losses. LSU got waxed by Tennessee as well, 40-13, and lost to a sub 500 Texas A&M game, late in the season.
I mean,
and Florida State brings everybody back. So does LSU. They both have impressive transfer portal classes, but I just think you're more solid with what Florida State brought back. Like, I get it. It's fresh start, recruiting rankings come into play, and it's not a big deal unless you lose that game. Then LSU will probably drop. They'll probably replace Florida State in the polls. If Florida State loses, they'll drop down to who knows, how far.
Neither team drops below 12, because that is one thing that I do enjoy looking at with these rankings, is at least where the voting points are, because you can tell where the tiers are. Like, there is a huge drop, about 100-point drop from Alabama to LSU. Like that is the first tier, that it is Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, now a drop. And that the debate between whether you like LSU or USC is really, really close. Whether you like Penn State or Florida State is really, really close. Clemson, according to the AP voters, a little bit behind Florida State. So I don't think that it's definitive that LSU should be behind Florida State. I think they're all occupying that you're not top 4, but we know you're top 10 kind of conversation. And I think whoever loses that game, unless it's a lopsided loss, is not falling below 11 or 12.
Yeah, I think you could throw everybody in like 4 through 12 interchangeably, and I would have no argument against it. Like if you want to have, Washington over Penn State, I mean, I wouldn't, but I think it's somewhat defensible, right? Like if you want to put, Texas over LSU, again, that's a little more projection involved, but I do think that 4 to 12 range is almost completely interchangeable. So I don't really have any complaints. And as Chip noted, the voting totals are all really similar.
I just want to point out that Danny Canal's using deserved for his team to be favored over someone else.
Deserved.
Hey, dude, you're
deserved.
I like to see what happens on the field. Call me crazy.
Yeah. All right.
Deserved.
Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to the SEC East win totals, starting with those Georgia Bulldogs and a win total that gives a simple proposition. Are they going 12-0? We'll get into that and more next.
And how about this? Get ready for non-stop action that will have you say, "You gotta be kidding!" Oh my, Canada! Mr. K-Six, what a play and what a finish! That's some pretty good football, eh? He's gone all the way to the house. It's the Canadian Football League, Thursday on CBS Sports Network.
Go Elks.
a reminder to all of you that Thursday, August 17th, 11 a.m. Eastern time, win totals locks. That's right. We've been giving you all of our picks, and they've been put out there, over, under, push to under, strong bet. You might be hearing this. Well, this is it. We're going to be called to task. We got to give our very best win totals bets, and we'll be doing that on Thursday. So come hang out with us. It is also the first official locks episode of the 2023 season, as the following Thursday will be week 0, then week 1, and you know how it goes for the next 15 Thursdays. So let us really enjoy one more check-in from the general manager of Vanderbilt football.
As much as I think it's the under is a safe play, like I can't even.
Count them up. Count them up. How many kids are going to win this fall?
I can't fathom 8 wins.
How many kids are going to win this fall?
I just can't. I don't see it. It's not on there. It's not the schedule I'm looking at. Unless there's another schedule somewhere.
And we begin with the top dogs, number 1 team in the country in the AP and coaches poll and CBS Sports 133. The Georgia Bulldogs open up their title defense against UT Martin at home on September 2nd. Then in week 2, they take on Oklahoma. Oh, no, that Oklahoma game got taken off. Okay, all right. So the Oklahoma game is gone. We got Ball State instead at home, then South Carolina at home, then UAB at home. First road trip of the season will be September 30th at Auburn, then back to Kentucky at home, at Vanderbilt on the 14th, off on the 21st ahead of that rivalry game against Florida in Jacksonville. Then it is Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, at Tennessee, and at Georgia Tech, a couple of roadies to close the year. Over under win total at 11.5, over at plus 110, under at minus 140. Paul, what are we doing with the dogs?
Well, I mean, obviously it seems like they probably with that schedule would go undefeated. They do have some things that are changing this year. They have a new quarterback they got to get in, and the defense, of course, is going to be the defense. Kirby Smart, they got the depth. That's the biggest thing, is they can just rotate guys in and out, a lot like what Alabama did when Kirby was there. But they still got to prove it with the quarterback, and that Tennessee game is at home or in Tennessee this year. And I want to tell a quick little story. I remember on the further review show last year after the Georgia-Missouri game, how you guys were like, you weren't worried about Georgia losing that game. But I can tell you, I was at the Braves game in the Chop House, and there were some Georgia fans worried about them losing that game. They all had their phones out, watching a game, pounding their fists, throwing their hands up, couldn't believe it. It was a closer game than it should have been, and they could have one of those. So, it's easy to say take the over undefeated, but it's not without question that, or out of the possibility that they could lose a game. So you could see a Tennessee or maybe a Missouri, but I'm gonna go with the over, but I wouldn't bet it just because it's hard to go perfect every year. So
I'm going to join you in going over. Again, I don't think this is a good play to make. I just don't want to take the juice side on all these. And so I'm getting plus 110 to the over. If Georgia plays to the same power rating that they've played the last roughly 2 years, then they should, if they stay healthy, which again, if they play to it, then they should go undefeated. But things do happen for sure, right? I do think there's a lot to like about this team, man. I like a lot of the young players that they've recruited on defense. Even though I didn't put quite as many Georgia guys on my first team all SEC ballot, I did have a ton of them on my second team. Like a couple of the more veteran defensive linemen who are maybe not first round types, but they'll make a roster. Yeah, right. Like guys who he's going to get drafted. I don't think he's like a first round pick. But some of the young guys are just absolute freaks. I want to see Michael Williams. I want to see more Starks. I think the receivers are pretty good, although practice reports for the scrimmage, I guess, had some drops. And I mean, their offensive line depth was so damn good last year. So I'm not super worried about that, but it is still hard to go undefeated. I mean, let's have our second Bama reference of the SEC East podcast. What team does Saban talk about having been his most talented for a long time? The 2010 team that went 10-3 after they had won. They went back to back, right? And that would have been the team that would have gone 3 in a row.
No,
because it was 4-108. Excuse me, but like that they had a shot to win back to backs, and they lost 3 times. So the most talented team doesn't always win. I'm still going to go over.
I'm going opposite. I'm going under. I think there's 2 major upset alert games. Hugh Freeze had a lot of success in this conference. He could have a game plan. I don't think it's Auburn, but that game in Knoxville, my goodness. We saw the home field advantage last year in Athens. I also think this is one of those games. I mean, and it wasn't only, Kent State. There's going to be a sleeper game. The issue is last year, Missouri was on the road. Like that was the sleeper game. Georgia will get up for Auburn. They'll get up for Tennessee. It's hard to find another, is it Vanderbilt? Vanderbilt, I don't think can do it. But I think there's a slip-up game on the schedule. But if I was going to pick one game, I'd say they lose to the Vols. So I'm going to go under. And plus, I just don't know. I don't know. There's not value on either side. I wouldn't play it, but I think the more likelihood is that they have a slip-up on the schedule. And I think also, too, Paul mentioned the change at quarterback, obviously. Maybe Stetson Bennett, there's an appreciation there for. There's always a process of feeling out a new quarterback. Carson Beck, is there a game? I go back to Jake Fromm, who was a seasoned veteran, had 3 interceptions against South Carolina, right? And they lost that game they should have won when he was there. Like, is there a game that Carson Beck just kind of doesn't show up? And they can lean on the run. They can probably bully their way to a win. But you just never know if there's a game where you lay the egg out there. And then I think Mike Bobo is a massive question mark because Todd Monken did a spectacular job designing up plays, getting Brock Bowers free, using him in motion, finding ways to get the playmakers the ball. That's going to be a big undertaking for Mike Bobo.
The last national champion who came back with the chances of being able to just absolutely blitz through their schedule was the 2019 Clemson Tigers. And they spanked almost everybody before they ended up losing to LSU in the national championship game. Obviously, they had the close game against Ohio State. But on September 28th, they went into Chapel Hill against year 1 Mac Brown and won 21-20 because Mac decides to go for 2 and send Sam Howell on a quarterback sneak around the corner. That game might be there, and the opponent's going to be better than North Carolina. Like Georgia, if there's going to be the letdown game, they might win it. But I do 100% think that there's going to be the letdown game. I would not bet this. I was thinking that if you want to take the under, which right now is going to be a little bit juicy, you're going to have to lay -140. I would almost say exact regular season win total 11. and get a little plus money. Because I'll tell you what ain't happening. Georgia's not losing 2 games. Like that is what, like that is not happening at all. This is 11-1 at worst. And it would just come down to complacency because the on paper position, I only have Tennessee as a toss up, but everything else factored in, winning 12 games after winning 15 in a row this past season is really, really tough. Danny, I'm with you. I think Carson Beck's going to be good. I am concerned because I just thought that Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas, aka the leading wide receivers for 2 other SEC teams, were just going to come in and hit the ground running. But it sounds like, maybe not everything is plug and play as they believed. So under, but I wouldn't bet it. If you're going to take a flyer, I would say exact win total 11 would be the way that I would play that one.
Count them out.
Sorry, Paul, what'd you say?
I was going to say, I just want to know how hard they tried to find a replacement for the Oklahoma game to come up with Ball State.
Listen, to be fair to the Georgia fans and the joke, I don't know if it was the week 2 game. It could have been the UAB game, just like specifically, but very different schedule. If either in week 2 or week 4, Georgia is playing Oklahoma instead of Ball State or UAB.
What if they just Googled like ball game replacement state school in Ball State?
Yeah, I don't know if Ball State head coach Mike New has any like connections with the UGA staff, but I'm sure he'll be excited to get them a test. Or maybe, following in the footsteps of Kent State last year, they want to go and find themselves a little maction to get themselves ready for the college football playoff. All right, the Tennessee Volunteers. Over under win total set at 9, over -120, under -110. The season starts in Nashville against Virginia. Then they are back in Knoxville for the home opener against Austin Peay, at Florida in week 3. Then UTSA at home, South Carolina at home, off on October 7th. Back in action with quite a back-to-back. Texas A&M at home, then at Alabama, then at Kentucky, then back home to Neyland Stadium for UConn. Then at Missouri, Georgia at home, Vanderbilt at home. Danny, I'll throw this one back to you. We got the Joe Milton era is underway. What do we think happens for the Vols?
I mean, if I think they're beating Georgia, that obviously is a game that tells you they're going over the total. So I'm going over with them. Clearly, I don't know if there's a player under more pressure than Joe Milton to keep this offense going at the clip it's been under Hendon Hooker. But Hendon Hooker threw 58 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in his 2 years started. That is about as elite as you get. But I do think I'm at the point where you kind of trust Josh Heupel and the system that he operates in. And you might not be that close. That's close to perfect. But I think they're going to put up a ton of points. I'm banking also that the defense cannot get any worse. I mean, statistically, I don't know if it is worse because they were so bad last year. We saw that on display when Spencer Rattler was lighting them up for 6 touchdowns. I think the defense will get a little bit better, so there isn't as much, there wasn't much margin for error. If you did screw up, you were going to give up a bunch of points. I think the defense will get a little bit better. The thing that gets interesting is, do they win the East if they beat Georgia? That one I have more question marks about. I do think there's more slip-ups on the schedule. I think it's clearly harder than Georgia's schedule. I think Florida's a tricky game, but I think they can win it. Texas A&M at home, I think, is a really tough game for them. I have them going 10-2.
Can I go last on this one?
Sure.
All right.
Paul?
I don't like it, but I'm kind of feeling like Danny. 10-2 seems likely. They have their harder games at home. Texas A&M is a hard game, like you said, but they get it at home. I have to think they're going to be ready for that South Carolina game at home. The Alabama game, of course, I think how I'm going with that one, but that's a revenge tour game for them. Georgia game could be a coin flip. I think for me, with Tennessee, it's just I got to see Joe Milton and how he looks. I think being in that offense with Heupel, he should be better. He should have plenty of time to have gotten more reps, more practice, just comfortable, or it could be not good. But I don't know. I have to see it. But I'll take the over too, just because that offense is it's pretty good. And the only time they stubbed their toe was the Georgia game, really. And then I'm not sure what happened in the South Carolina game, but it just seemed like they had some issues there. But that can happen when they go to South Carolina. But
how do you know the offense is pretty good?
It's that system, like you say,
first-hand experience.
Like you say, it's a cheat code,
right? And I think there's value in Milton having watched Hendon Hooker. Like when you see somebody in front of you that you think you're just as talented, and I'm assuming he does, like, hey, I can throw it just as far as he can. Maybe not the pinpoint accuracy, but if you watch somebody who trusted the system, played within it, if I just execute it like that, we can do the similar, I can have the same success. I think there's value in that.
So before Bud goes, because he wants to go last, I'm going to pull a word out of the Bud book here, and it's variance, because there is a path where Tennessee's 12-0. There is a path where Tennessee's 7-5. I'm looking at the schedule, and I see a lot of toss-up games here, like games where Tennessee is going to be a favorite, but not so much of a favorite that you would go in and be like, this is an absolute lock. And a couple games, like at Alabama or against Georgia, where Tennessee will be an underdog, but because of the offense, you don't want to totally count them out. I come out to 9-3. I come out to 9-3 lots of different ways. But if you make me go over or under, as we are with this exercise, give me the under. And some of that is just thinking that getting to 10-2 is going to be really difficult when you do have some of those games. Like, could Kentucky in Lexington be a little more challenging than we're thinking with the memory of what Kentucky was last year? If the quarterback play is improved, if the offensive line is improved, if the offensive coordinator is an upgrade, does all of a sudden that become a little bit more dicey of a proposition? Again, I'm kind of on 9-3. Jordan's going to mute me any second, but go ahead and give me the under before I'll take the over.
Yeah, I'm right there on 9 as well. That's why I wanted to go last. If everybody had unitied this thing, I was just going to argue the other side for argument's sake. There's so much to like about this team. Apparently, the Dante Thornton kid is just like literally that fast and just as good of an athlete as Jalen Hyatt was. And I mean, like, they lost a top 10 pick at offensive tackle to Tom's Chicago Bears, who apparently is playing well. But everything I've read, everything I've heard is that John Campbell is playing exceptionally well for them. The transfer they got from Miami, who got hurt last year at Miami. So it looks like they might have found one there. And I mean, most of the dudes who left Tennessee's roster after Pruitt left were defensive guys. So I know Heupel has discussed this in the press conferences, how they were missing defensive depth, and now they've probably rebuilt that a little bit. And I think the Peely kid they got from BYU is a pretty decent player, and Milton clearly has upside, right? That is just sky high. But I am going to go under just for purposes of the bet. Juice is 110 to the under, 120 to the over. So it's slightly, if I'm right there on the number, if I was going to go over this, I would rather just give me the moonshot that like Tennessee wins a national title type thing. Because if Milton's ceiling, like if he's going to be like, Vince Young and Cam Newton combined or something like that, then I kind of want like a big ticket, kind of like we talked about with A&M last year, except I do trust Tennessee to be a little more stable than the Aggies. But there's a lot of games where if they're just a slight step back, just a slight from last year, they could lose. Like at Missouri, they probably need to take a bigger step back than just a slight one to lose at Missouri. But like Milton could have an off day where he's just missing open guys, and not everything they scheme open is hit, and Missouri scores enough because Tennessee's defense is just improved, but not world beaters. Chip already mentioned Kentucky, which I totally agree. A&M, could give them problems in theory. Yeah. So yeah, and like even Florida played them fairly tough for like 25 minutes last year, and then they kind of blinked and Tennessee just knocked them out. But yeah, I kind of I could see an 8-4, but I could also certainly see like a 12-0. So I'm going to go under ever so slightly. Sorry for a long talk on something I don't have much conviction in.
No. This is important information to convey so that somebody's not like running to the window when you're getting these kinds of opinions. I like Cam in the chat offers a great proposition. Joe Milton Heisman and Tennessee under. Because listen, speaking of the Baylor offense, the Robert Griffin III Heisman Trophy win is on a 10-3 season.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the I put up ridiculous stats, but we weren't a national championship contender path that's always there for the Heisman Trophy.
I do think if we keep calling it that, Jordan will mute us since the guys there were not on that the BAYLOR staff. So they want to call it the Veer and Shoot from now on.
That's fine. I mean, Veer and Shoot
for a rebranding, which in fairness, if I'm running a scheme, but I actually wasn't there at the program, I would probably be on the same boat.
And for fairness, Veer and Shoot was here before we started calling it the Baylor offense.
This is true.
That's OG football right there.
I do want to say,
yes.
Sorry, I do want to say that's one thing about that offense. It's a really good offense, but Hendon Hooker that guy was accurate. I mean, in college football, if you got a quarterback that's accurate, you're going to win a lot of games. And that's why I say I got to see if Joe Milton can at least come comparable. I don't expect him to be that accurate. That guy was pretty precise. He's good. I'm interested to see him in the NFL, but if Joe Milton can come close, they should be pretty good.
I think that's an important handicapping thing, though.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, is there a signal if you lose a first-round pick? No doubt about it. But you do need to be able to realize, okay, even though this guy went, I don't know, we got drafted, third round or something like that, maybe, but whenever Hooker got drafted, and that was off an injury and the fact that he's old, but the guy was a damn good college football quarterback. I agree. Like, you can be a really good college football player, leave, and we still need to make the proper adjustment to your team's rating, even if you weren't a great NFL player. College is a little different game.
100%. Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to the rest of the division. Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Florida, and our doors. All that and more next.
CBS Sports Network goes all in with the World Series of Poker. We're talking a full house of characters in a competition flush with cash. The World Series of Poker on CBS Sports Network.
How many games are going to win this fall? It's an important question for Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats. Over under win total of 7. Round 7. Over at -140, under at +110, over at Caesars Sportsbook. Schedule opens up with Ball State. You are doing that thing again, huh?
Getting paid though.
I was gonna say, I hope they're making money off that.
I hope so.
Ballin' State.
Eastern Kentucky in week 2, Akron in week 3. That's just good macking right there by Mark Stoops. Then SEC opener at Vanderbilt on September 23rd. Then Florida at home, at Georgia, and then Missouri at home. Off on the 21st, back in action with Tennessee at home, then at Mississippi State, Alabama at home, at South Carolina, at Louisville. Alabama rotates in from the West. That's not advantageous. Bud, what are we doing? Kentucky at 7.
We're going to go over, mainly because I do think 8 is somewhat more likely than 6. I can get you to 6 reasonably, not easy, but with some certainty. So I think that Devin Leary is a good quarterback, and from all accounts, he seems healthy. I'm not saying he's going to be amazing. I just think he can be good. They got a good player in Ray Davis from Vanderbilt. Obviously, their comments at SEC Media Day indicate that they like their receivers an awful lot. And look, I don't think you have to be a believer in Liam Cohen being a genius, although some people certainly think he is at offensive coordinator, and him returning to Lexington to believe that, like last year, the coaching staff mix they had on offense just was not a fit. And so I think you'll have some improvement there. Not to play the schedule game immediately, but I do think there's a excellent chance they start out 3-0, and a pretty good chance they start out 4-0, and they may be to 5 wins before they get out of September. I mean, the 5-0 is not a remote possibility with Ball State, EKU, Akron, Vandy, Florida. So at that point, they need to get me 2 more if they get there. At Georgia, probably a little tough. Missouri at home, I like my chances in that one. At Mississippi State, a difficult place to play. They all are in the SEC for the most part, but not the most difficult place to play. At South Carolina, again, like that's been tough for sure, but Kentucky can play these guys well. Levis, they lost last year, and they lost the ball game because the backup just couldn't play. And we'll see what happens at Louisville. So I'm going to go over. I just think Mark Stoops is a good coach, and I do need some overs.
What about the depth of this team? Like the competitive depth? Because that's one thing that stands out to me. You mentioned how the wins are there at the beginning, but when your month of November is 3 road trips and your only home game is against Alabama, or even if you were to take it more specifically, you return from your off week and your only home games are Tennessee and Alabama with 3 road games right there. This one was a team that, and I'm asking this in the context of the conversation, do you feel like Kentucky has been able to build out through recruiting and development the kind of depth where if they take a couple injuries here or there, they're not going to be just devastated and facing 4 or 5 straight losses there in the back half of the season?
Not really, no, because you're still facing SEC quality players, and I think you have to assume that some of the teams you'll be playing down the stretch did not have all those injuries. So basically anybody on this list, if they get a bunch of injuries, is probably not going to go over their win total, with the exception of maybe Georgia. And it may just be the case that Georgia is, if Georgia's like a 35 power rating, nobody else is over a 20, right? And so like on neutral site, they're just 2 touchdowns better than everybody they play. Not everybody in the SEC, but everybody they play. Important to note there. Everybody else that we're going to talk about today, if they get injuries, they're going under. So you do need whatever over teams you pick to stay healthy.
7-5 through and through. So you got to push me one way or the other. I'll go ahead and throw this on the over as well. With there's just no way that I think that this offense is not going to be better with the changes that have been made. So I've got Kentucky over, but really it's a push to over for me.
Do you think you're going to get rich betting against Mark Stoops consistently? Because I do not.
No.
That's not a team that gets overhyped typically.
Well, I was going to say, we talked about the variance with Tennessee. Don't you feel like the worst case is probably 6 wins, and maybe the best case you could have a little bit more of upside, but I feel like it's 6, 7, or 8 wins. Like it's right in there. I don't know if there's, you think you like the upside, bud?
No. I'm saying as far as downside, if Leary gets hurt, I mean, like South Carolina had no business winning last year in Lexington, but when Leary got hurt, that backup, I forgot, was it kind of was it Sharon kid couldn't play. I mean, like they literally, South Carolina won the game because the opposing quarterback just gave it to him over and over again.
But didn't Stoops get like 6 or 7 wins with a wide receiver playing quarterback?
They won 7 games and they lost to Vanderbilt.
Right.
That's
why I feel like the bottom doesn't drop out of a Stoops coach quad. I mean, it's more of a compliment to him. Yeah. I had him at 7-5 too. I think it's an upgraded quarterback. I think it's an upgraded offensive line. The experience coming back, I think they have to be better. It's sort of a staple of this offense. Liam Cohen, I think will figure out a way how to use Devin Leary. I think Devin Leary will get more consistent play and a little less of the mistakes that Will Levis had last year, which is kind of crazy. You get an upgrade off a guy who was projected to be the number 1 overall pick. Remember Lane Kiffin and his comments? But I think they do. I think they get better play. I'm going to go over, but ever so slightly. I think 7-5 is probably the more likely number.
Paul.
Well, I thought I was going to have an easy one because when I looked this up, it was 6.5. But 7-5 seems like the most likely. There's a lot of coin flips here. One of my favorite games watching is the Kentucky-Florida game because Florida thinks that they're entirely better than Kentucky, and when they lose to them, it's hilarious. So,
well, didn't they win 28 straight or something bananas like that?
They did,
and it's gone sideways recently. But I mean, when you have a generation of winning against another opponent, I understand why you might be a little cocky.
Yeah. So I mean, they start out pretty easy. I don't know. Our doors might give them a hard time. We'll see how they look, but 7-5 seems likely. If I had to pick over under, probably over, just because 6-6 just doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Also, I think that doesn't trigger the automatic extension, right? Best contract in college sports. Is it 7 that is the flag that gets you there?
I thought they reworked that a little bit. Like they've sort of
raised the bar,
raised the money, but raised the bar a little bit. Which I'm like, hey, I don't know. Do we move the location of the university? If not, let's stick with that original contract because we're.
Hey, listen, that's why he's got to put all those MAC teams on the schedule so that he can go into MAC country and be able to get the like that. That's his like that's how he maximizes the advantage. Is I'm going to go and I'm going to get the best 3 stars out of this little valley, this part of the country, and we'll develop them into good players along the lines of scrimmage.
Maximizes.
Hey, there we go.
I hope Ball State has good medical staff because their first 2 weeks are pretty rough.
Brutal.
Count them out.
Well, we opened the show talking about Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers and his camo shorts. So let's turn
He's just trying to fit in.
He's trying to fit in Missouri.
In Missouri, yeah.
I don't have great Missouri experience. Anybody? Okay,
It's a little bit.
It's pretty rural.
Good friend of mine, Bill Connolly, lives in Columbia, and Missouri is kind of very Florida-esque in like it's all about where you are within the state. You know, I mean, like Havana and Miami, could not feel any more different. Not Cuba, but actually the city up in the Panhandle. So where you are in the state of Missouri matters an awful lot culturally.
I don't have any good jokes that I can pop off on Missouri. I don't want Missouri coming from my neck like that.
Well, you got Kansas City and St. Louis are in Missouri, but they're on the very edges, and then in the middle, the majority of the middle is pretty rural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as Chris is asking in the chat, why is Missouri in the East? I don't know. Thankfully, we'll be able to rework all of this to a divisionless format.
It was less absurd than putting Texas A&M in the East because like literally teams that are like drivably east of them were in the West.
And right. They wouldn't do it for Auburn. So
yeah.
There you go. Missouri opens the season on Thursday of week 1 against South Dakota. Then it is Middle Tennessee at home, Kansas State at home. Then they play Memphis in St. Louis. First true road game of the season for the Tigers is going to be September 30th at Vanderbilt. Back home, LSU on October 7th, at Kentucky on the 14th. Then South Carolina at home, off on the 28th after 8 straight games. Back in action on November 4th at Georgia, Tennessee at home, Florida at home, and then at Arkansas for that rivalry game on Black Friday. Over under win total at Caesar Sportsbook set at 6.5, over at -105, under at -125. Paul, why don't you get us started here? What are we doing with the Alpha Nerd here in 2023?
Their schedule lines up about what you expect. They got a couple of good games to start with to get ready. I don't think they're going to win that Kansas State game, though, especially on the road. Even though it's not that far of a road game for them, it's still Kansas State is pretty good team this year. And the Memphis game.
Hold on. I'm going to quote Barton on you. That I don't know what schedule you're looking at. Not on this schedule.
Last year,
I've got that as a home game.
Yeah,
for Missouri. Am I wrong on this?
Oh, sorry, I was looking at that. Yep, it's my bad. Yep, nope. That's
they do not leave the state of Missouri, where high school players can get paid NIL starting in the first week of September. They're not leaving the state lines until September 30th.
Yeah, that's I was looking at that backwards. I still think Kansas State should be the better team there. So they start out 2-1, and then Memphis didn't look great to me last year. I don't have a feel for them this year, but they should be able to win that game as well. The Doors again, I don't know, could be a coin flip there. You never know there, but LSU, they're not winning that. So I could see 6-6. I can see 7-5. I'm gonna take the under on this one just because I don't have a lot of confidence. The defense was pretty bad last year, and I don't know if they've done a lot to upgrade it. And you gotta have some defense. You got to stop something. So I'm taking the under 6-6.
I'm with Paul on this one. I'm taking the under as well. I mean, we were just talking about Mark Stoops, kind of trust him to overperform. Eli, Drinkwitz, we've seen, pretty much churning out 6-6 before his first year with the 5-win season. Like, is this a team that you can trust to win some of those tight games, which they did last year, but they also lost a lot of toss-up games. I don't know. How do you paint the picture? Now there's a couple ones on here too. I mean, some of this was tied to Kentucky over. I'm going to take Missouri under, but what's the upside for this team? Where does it come from? The roster is okay. The quarterback's okay. Defense was not good last year. Like, it just reeks of a 6-6 team.
I am going to join you on the under because I have to make my picks make sense mathematically.
That's where I was too. That's where
With
I was.
Kentucky and Missouri. Yeah.
A couple things here. One, I do think Drinkwitz is probably a fine coach, and that people expecting more than bowl eligibility on a consistent basis at Missouri are nuts. But that's just me. And I mean, I'm sure the pressure will ramp up when they're landing 5 stars, through the high school ranks. I wanted to ask Danny about this. What is your concern level if you had really bad quarterback play last year, and then you watch him, like some of the practice videos, and they're doing the drills, and they got to dodge the yoga ball, and they got to pop up and throw to one of those nets that has like the 4 targets, and they're just missing the entire net? Like, what level of confidence does that give you in the improved quarterback play for Missouri? Because I'm
not a lot. Well, that's what I was going to get to also, because I know Garcia looked pretty good in time at Miami when he got there. Do you think there's a chance he could play?
He got hurt too, and then like I think I don't think he's hurt now as far as I know, but I wonder if that hurts his development a little. I just, if I'm going to bet over, I need to have some confidence that they're going to have at least okay quarterback play, and I lack that confidence. I do think their O-line's probably pretty good. I think the D coordinator's a stud. So
I think their defense will be better.
I thought it was good at times last year, honestly. I mean, like Tennessee lit them up, and they had a couple times when they were problematic, but they gave Georgia hell for like 40 minutes, and then Georgia's like, okay, you guys are just going to shoot up field all the time. We're just going to run power counter at you nonstop and see if we can gash you, vertically with that, and they did. I do see some scenarios though, and I'll shut up because I know I'm going long on this. They beat South Carolina in Columbia last year, right? Okay, Florida. Are we confident the Gators are like super motivated to go to cold ass Columbia, middle of nowhere, the week before Florida State comes to Gainesville?
Oh, like trap game for the Gators, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can see a 7-5.
I can definitely see a 7-5. I'm gonna go under because it's not the Push 3 podcast, right? Cover 3.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, let's go clean sweep. I need to make my math work, but it's not because of Kentucky. It's because of another team that we haven't talked about yet. Just got to make the math work. Got to be honest about what I'm doing here with these win totals. I think that they need to find, like, you've got Luther Burden there on the outside. And that guy, talent-wise, is going to play in the NFL. Production-wise, we might not see it in college if they can't get anything going at the quarterback position, but there are some spots where you can imagine how things will get going. Defensively, I think they'll be all right. Like you mentioned, Bud, they got shredded, but it's not like a lot of, let's see, Kansas State put up like 40 on them, but there's a lot of like 24-17s.
Wasn't that like 2 pick sixes?
Oh, with the Kansas State game?
I thought I had an under bet in that game, and I was like, damn it, you got to be kidding me. Like a terrible weather, and they get like 2 pick 6 scores or like two turnovers that were way down deep. I'm derailing the show now, complaining about bad beats from 11 months ago, but I'm pretty sure like the defense played okay there, and that basically the offense just gave it to Kansas State.
They gave up 21 points to Kentucky. They gave up 10 points to South Carolina, 14 to Vanderbilt. Just 24 to Florida. You mentioned 26 to Georgia, just 17 to Auburn. Like, they did a good job of suppressing scoring just a little bit. So I think they'll be okay. They return a bunch of starters on that side of the ball and a bunch of production as well. But ultimately, I am going under. I think that this is yet another 6-6 team for the Alpha Nerd.
Yeah, punt return touchdown.
Win this fall.
Yeah, punt return and a fumble return touchdown, by the way, for the Wildcats in that one, and another touchdown drive under 50 yards. I'm still pissed about that somehow internally. I need to speak to somebody.
The South Carolina Gamecocks, Shane Beamer, after I would say exceeding expectations last season. Now we're back for year 3 following that 8-5 campaign. Over under win total is set at 6.5, over at +120, under at -150. We open with the Dukes Mayo kickoff game in Charlotte against North Carolina. Then home openers against Furman, then at Georgia week 3, Mississippi State at home, then at Tennessee on September 30th. Off on October 7th, back in action with Florida at home, then back-to-back roadies at Missouri, at Texas A&M, then Jacksonville State, coming to town. Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Clemson. Those are 4 straight home games. Just a residency in Williams-Brice Stadium for the Gamecocks coming down the stretch. Danny, what you got?
So Shane Beamer's a culture guy, right? He wants to build a positive culture, which I am kind of surprised that the culture guy has lost a lot of weapons, good weapons, right? Jaheim Bell goes to Florida State. Who was the defensive guy that left to
Jordan Birch?
Jordan Birch. They lost a couple.
Yeah, they lost. Yeah, exactly. That's like, I'm a little bit curious to know kind of what's going on behind closed doors. Spencer Rattler, man, is he living off that Tennessee game where he's counting them up on the sideline? Remember six touchdowns? He counted them all. If you take away that game, it's a whole lot more of the Spencer Rattler you've seen throughout his career, which was way up and down. It's 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Yes, he can be a highlight reel, but he's also incredibly up and down. I'm a little more worried about South Carolina, having one of those years where the bottom falls out a little bit. It's kind of a reset year. I'm going to go under with South Carolina.
Same. I've got North Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida, at Missouri, Kentucky. It is nice that they have a lot of those toss-ups at home, but I can't see them going 4-1. I've got Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Clemson as losses. This feels like a 6-6 team for me. So I'm also on the under for the Gamecocks.
I'm not concerned about the vibes long-term. And
right.
I think Beamer got the extension. And I mean, I looked to some other stuff that I would consider like leading indicators, and they are recruiting exceptionally well right now. They're top 20 in recruiting. I think some of the reasons why they lost some of those kids were sort of like temporary hiccup in the Gamecocks program, and that they now are seem to be remedying, in terms of like player retention quality. And I've gone over on them, and actually I locked them up both years in a row and hit the over both years in a row, and still got crap for it on the Big Spur message board, which shout out to you guys. I absolutely love y'all. But this year, Jordan, if you're decent, can you pop on and give us your opinion on Dowell Loggins? Because I don't know a whole lot about this OC. I know as a Titans fan, you have a distinct opinion about who they decided to replace Satterfield with.
Oh, yeah. What's up, Jordan?
That guy sucks.
Okay. All right.
Outstanding.
Producer Jordan, he's like, they hired who? So, and again, like, maybe he'd be great. I actually think there's a decent chance that he's an improvement over Satterfield. So I'm going to go under as well. I think they make a bowl. I think they're more 6-6, honestly, than 7-5. And so definitely not selling Beamer in the long term, but my friend Bill Connolly calls it a consolidation of gains year, when like you've taken 2 steps forward consecutively, and maybe you're not ready to take yet another step forward, and you have another year, which by your standards is a good year. Like South Carolina making a bowl is a good year, especially when you play Clemson, North Carolina in the non-conference. So under for me ever so slightly.
Yeah, I can definitely find 5 losses on the schedule. So then there's always a couple coin flips there that might not go in your favor. Is the guy that called the last 2 games for them on offense the play caller now, or is it?
No, they brought in a new guy who was he was at Arkansas, Dowell Loggins.
Oh, okay. Don't know about that. I'm gonna say under as well, just because 7-5 seems like it's possible, but it's South Carolina and they know how to ruin a game for sure. So we'll see if the play calling is like the other 2 games, it could be. But I listened to the summer school, and it sounds like the defense is lacking some depth, and if they have any injuries, it could go sideways for them on that side of the ball for sure.
Summer school plug.
That's right. And we do love our friends at the Big Spur, because I'm sure we're going to get aggregated for all these unders that we're dropping on here. We love you. I promise.
They do an awesome job. And South Carolina has the best fans in the SEC, in my opinion.
They do an amazing job
really
of paying attention to everything that is said about their program.
We
love you. We legitimately love you for your passion.
I'm in Charleston, and they definitely pay attention to everything someone says about their program. All we have is Clemson and South Carolina fans.
The Florida Gators. 5.5 wins right now. I pulled this one, and there might be some other market numbers. If you want to reference them, that's fine. I pulled it at like over -155, under +125. We've got a schedule that, of course, opens up against Utah in Salt Lake City. Then they are back home to the Swamp with McNeese. Then Tennessee coming to Gainesville. Then Charlotte coming to Gainesville. Then at Kentucky, Vanderbilt at home, at South Carolina. Off on the 21st and advance to the rivalry game against Georgia and Jacksonville. Then Arkansas at home, at LSU, at Missouri, and the Florida State game also at home. Paul, why don't you get us started with the Gators? So let's see. Gator Danny says, "Ooh, I'll save that. I'll save that opinion here to bring us home." All right, Paul, where are we going?
5.5. I mean, I can see them losing 7 games. I can see them winning 7 games. I'm going to take the over slightly. I don't like it, but it's another one of those things where you gotta have to see. They didn't have the best season last year. Have to see what some of the upgrades have been in that first game. We'll find out. They'll be in Utah. They'll be in that thin air. I think that'll be Utah's advantage. So I don't see them winning that, but you still can get a feel for the team and what they're trying to do. And that's one of those games I'll definitely be watching for sure. I think Utah lost in Florida just because they weren't ready for that humidity. So they
now they get the payback.
They couldn't play a 4-quarter game, but I don't think Florida's ready for that mountain air either. I've been to Salt Lake, and it's different when you're hiking around there. So I don't like it. There's quite a few coin flips on here. I can see 6-6. I can see 5-7 variance, like you said. There's no way I'll take the over slightly, but it's not. I would not bet it.
The guys making this 5.5 know that Florida landed Graham Mertz in the transfer portal, right? Like, it's not like, hey, they have Graham Mertz, I'm going under, right? Like, the fact that he has been a generally poor quarterback, I think, is priced in to the number. If you're betting under 5.5 on the Gators, that's the lowest preseason win total for them I've ever seen. So you're basically coming out and saying this is the worst team that Florida has ever had preseason. Obviously, what happened in 2013 when they got crazy injuries and were playing like a walk-on quarterback is kind of accepted. So I don't see it, man. Like I think they can go 6-6. I think there is some chance they can go 7-5 if they get reasonable health. I mean, they can play sort of just bully ball. I think with the size they have on lines of scrimmage and a better secondary, and I mean, I don't think they're like an 8-4, 9-3 type team, but I think that they're going to go over. So give me the over.
Yep. Yeah, Paul.
I was going to say I forgot the Graham Mertz thing. I might have made a comment on your account the other day on Twitter, but it was really hard to watch that guy at Wisconsin. Like I had to turn those games off. Like I'm maybe they figured out something, a cheat code to unlock him or something, but it's not good to watch football like that.
Hey, listen, let me turn your attention back to the 2020 delayed opener against Illinois, where the man looked like Russell Wilson. Like he was phenomenal for one game
against Illinois.
But hey, listen, we know what to do with Illinois now, all right? But then he got COVID. Like he went out, he had the game of his life, and then he probably just didn't obey social distancing. And you know what? If I had played the game of my life on national television, maybe I wouldn't distance myself either. I can't put myself in his shoes. But that is what you're looking at. A Florida fan is looking at the Graham Mertz performance against Illinois in that opener and seeing the way that he could move with the ball, seeing the way he was able to push it down the field. And you're thinking, okay, this is our answer. This is how it's going to work. I'm not that bullish on Graham Mertz specifically. I do think they've got a couple great running backs. I think that, like Bud said, while we've got some absences on the offensive line that are concerning, overall, we're talking about guys with the size to be able to go out and execute what Billy Napier wants to do. I am on the over for Florida, and Gator Danny is on the over as well.
All right, let's get these likes up, by the way, on this. Because you just talked about Graham Mertz. Big Ten, social distancing. This is an SEC show today. You know who didn't obey social distancing? The SEC schedule in 2020. And if Greg Sankey had not held the line, maybe everybody else would have followed the Big Ten and canceled the season, right? And then we would have never known that some of the New York Times takes about how this, like we would not have had the ridiculous UConn as the national champion take had Sankey and those guys not held the line. So get the likes up. I know what the chat likes on this SEC show. Get them up. Let's get us to 30,000 before I got to bounce out of here.
Count the rings. Huskies football 2020. How many games are going to win this fall? All right. And finally, the Vanderbilt Commodores. Our doors. We already got a visit from Barton Simmons earlier in the offseason. Hopefully we get some mid-season visits as well. They open up week 0, Hawaii at home. Then week 1, Alabama A&M. Then at Wake Forest, at UNLV, Kentucky at home, Missouri at home, at Florida, then Georgia at home. Off on the 21st. Then Mississippi on the road on the 28th, Auburn at home, at South Carolina, off again on the 18th, thanks to that week 0 schedule. And then they close the season at Tennessee. Over under win total of 4, over plus 120, under minus 150. Bud.
I'm going over, man. I believe in what Vanderbilt's doing. I know what a really good Vandy team looks like, that like the very best James Franklin teams, and they're not that. I don't think they're playing at like a top 25, top 30 power rating level. But could they play at like a top 60, a top 65 maybe power rating level if the quarterback takes a little step forward, if they find a couple more answers at corner maybe? I think they're probably okay on the D-line. I like the scrimmage reports that Robbie does at Vandy 247. Seems like they're blocking it up pretty well. I'm going to go over here, man. I think they people still don't take them seriously enough within the SEC, and they could clip somebody just like they did Kentucky last year, and they could have got Missouri too. By the way, last year, if you guys recall that one.
Yeah, and it was the Kentucky game too. Oh no, they beat Kentucky, but it was the South Carolina game, like the Missouri game and the South Carolina game. Vanderbilt was getting better and better, and then they finally broke through. I mentioned needing to get the math right. They get Kentucky and Missouri, those teams that they went head to head with. Both those games are going to be at home, and both those games are before they have to go and play the likes of a Georgia or an Auburn, those teams that you might be worried about a little bit of a body blow. Give me the dub against Hawaii. Give me the dub against Alabama A&M. Give me the dub against UNLV. I think they could go into Winston-Salem, the big old, I know what you call it now, but it's BB&T Field to me. I think they can go and get that win. I think they get at least 2 SEC wins. This is a team that flirts with bowl eligibility, not one that flirts with 3-9 or 4-8. So give me the over emphatically on our doors.
Can I add another one they could get?
Yeah.
Who's a coach who has a history of taking down giants, but maybe stepping on some landmines along the way, maybe not having his team ready? A coach who Paul is very familiar with, who would beat Alabama and then turn around and just completely lay an egg in the SEC West or even in the non-conference.
Hugh Freeze. You get
Sandwich
Auburn
between that Mississippi State game and at Arkansas. They just got to take a little trip up to Nashville. Broadway gets the best of us, right? I mean, like it's possible. Doesn't have his team ready. It happens all the time under Freeze, seems like.
All right, Paul. What are you doing with our doors?
4 is an interesting number for them. I think they the books are on to our doors. You'd expect them to be at 3.5, but 4. I can see 5 wins. I could see it being a push. But the thing that gets it for me is that Kentucky, Missouri, 2-game homestand. If they lose one of they're going to win at least one of those. So I'm going to go over. I could see 5 and 7 with the schedule. It kind of lines up for them to be able to do that. I will say it's interesting that they do play UNLV in Vegas, which is on CBS. So that might be interesting to watch to see how they acclimate to that new time zone out there. I don't know if Vanderbilt's ever traveled that far. What's the farthest they've traveled? Do we know?
They won at Hawaii.
In Hawaii last year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They beat that ass. It was like 63-10.
I forgot about that. Yeah, because they did the back-to-back. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. It's a road game, but they should win that one. I'll be watching that for sure. 7 p.m. lines up good with the schedule. Give me the over. 5 wins is definitely doable. They're improving. They're taking those steps, like Chip says. Lose big, lose small, win big, and we'll definitely see that from them. I think this year. If not, Barton Simmons will have some explaining to do for sure.
Hey, listen, we got a new contract extension for Clark Lee, and that's job security for the head coach. It's normally job security for the general manager. We absolutely love to see it. All right, Paul, you've been a champion today. You have upheld the standard in your return visit to the Cover 3 podcast, a full show live, no pre-tape segments here. You did a fantastic job. We really appreciate you and your contribution to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And Thursday, yes, that's right, the Win Totals Locks episode. Come hang out and do it live with us at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him. Listen, catch him, Down South Soldier, in the chat. Come and subscribe and hang out live, and you can come talk with Paul during our shows as well. Paul, you want to throw out a Twitter account?
You
can say no.
I'd have to it's kind of not a serious Twitter account. So if I were on the show regularly, I would have a more professional.
You clean up your social media presence, is what you're saying right now.
100%.
No matter
only
how
50% of us have. So
100%.
I think that your contribution and your presence here is taken. So we thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.